This is Michael Lukes with After School, and this is the 5 Minutes with a Teen Difference Maker interview series, a collaborative effort between After School and our partner Peace First. Today we're speaking with 21-year-old Fish Stark, founder of the Teaching Peace Initiative to combat a culture of violence and intolerance in Annapolis, Maryland. Fish, thank you for joining me. Give us a quick 30-second overview of the Teaching Peace Initiative.
Yeah, good to be here. Well, first, thanks, Michael, and thanks After School for having me on. So the Teaching Peace Initiative is training teens in high schools across the country to be ambassadors for peace and tolerance in their communities. We're working with a dozen schools from Connecticut to Kansas to West Virginia, where we have peace teams, groups of high school students who we train to deliver our tolerance and nonviolent conflict resolution and anti-bullying curriculum. We believe that if we want to stop the epidemic of bullying, then kids don't want to hear lectures from adults about how they should be, behaving in the school context. What they need is interaction with peers. And so we're trying to use that to create cultures of peace in the schools we work in.
And why are you passionate about working with and for kids?
I think everyone has a passion, and I think they come to it almost by accident. I've come to realize that, working with kids is what I want to make my life's work, because those are the experiences where I've felt the most at home with myself, have felt the most excited about the work I've been doing. In addition to my work at the Teaching Peace Initiative, I've worked as an educator in daycare centers with an urban squash program. What I really like about working with kids, and why I think kids make really good anti-bullying educators, is because young people are always willing to ask questions. They're always willing to have their mind changed, and they're always open to the people around them. And that's something that, I think makes it a really special experience.
And was there a tipping point, something that really inspired you to get started with this?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of classmates and I, when we were 16, we went to a conference on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And there were speakers, there were generals, there were senators, there were people from the United Nations talking about, the long history and legacy of conflict and distrust and hate between cultures. And at the end of the conference, this one man named Coleman McCarthy, who looked like he was Bernie Sanders before Bernie Sanders was cool. He had the same little Brooklyn accent. Got up and he started talking about how we don't teach peace in schools anymore. We don't teach, we don't use the opportunity when we're working with kids to actually really intentionally go out there and say, look, this is how we want to treat other people in the world, and this is how we can solve problems without using violence. And if we aren't going to have the conversations about tolerance and nonviolence and peace and love, then how can we expect to raise a generation that's going to practice that when they're adults? And that was really what sparked our interest, because we saw, in our school, in our community, in the world around us, we saw the manifestation of hate and intolerance every single day, right? We saw bullying in schools, but on a broader scale. You see all kinds of violence and discrimination. And we thought, wow, we really want to do something. And we think that if we raise our voices and if we go to other kids in schools in our community and just start a conversation, we could really make something happen.
And going off that, making something happen, what have your results been? What have you seen so far?
So every time we go into a classroom, we work with kids, we have a pre-test that we start off at the beginning and a post-test that we start off at the end. We are big believers in measuring what we do and figuring out what works. What we've been able to see is that with the students we work with, when they have a group of people who are not teachers but who are older peers come into their classroom and start a conversation about bullying, about tolerance, we see that they're more likely to be able to recognize all forms of bullying, right? Because bullying doesn't always look like the guy grabbing you by your collar and saying, give me your lunch money, right? Bullying more often looks like social exclusion and isolation, right? Malicious rumor spreading, and students are able to recognize those forms of bullying, identify that they are going to take responsibility for making their school safer and be an upstander in situations of bullying, and self-identifying as peacemakers, saying these are the values and the issues that are important to me, and I'm going to, when I'm out in the world, I'm going to be putting tolerance first. And so those are the ways we've seen we're able to move students just by getting high school students into their classrooms and starting conversations. And so we use that to get a little bit of grant money and expand into some more schools. And we're really excited, to continue working with more students across the country.
In a recent interview with fellow Peace First fellow Jeremiah Anthony, who also works on the subject of anti-bullying, he said it takes a bit of madness to change the world. Do you think that bullying prevention needs to be unconventional? And if so, or if not, why?
I think that Jeremiah hit the nail on the head, right? I think it's a challenge, and I think sometimes it's risky to try and change the status quo. I think you need a little bit of a fire in your belly, and you need to be a little bit uninhibited to be able to charge out there and say, this isn't right, and I'm going to try and do something differently. Yeah, I think bullying prevention needs to be unconventional, and here's why. Because I think we've been trying to do bullying prevention for the past 20 years, and it hasn't worked. I mean, I can't think of another issue where there's been so much relentless media focus on it for the past 20 years, and we haven't seen a decline in bullying. And so I think, we need to recognize that a lot of the situations, frankly, have mostly just been adults lecturing the kids. They're not working. And we need to be willing to try something different, to shake it up. And, I think that young people respond really well to dynamism and to seeing something new. A lot of the young people we're working with are just really excited to be a part of something that's daring and different. And so I couldn't agree with Jeremiah more.
Great. And for other students, other youth who are looking to make a big difference on any topic, what are some of your top tips for them?
My top tips for people wanting to make a difference on any topic. I think the first thing is go for it, right? Why wait? If you've got an idea and you're passionate about it, you see something in the world that's wrong and you know what can be done to fix it, there is nothing that should stop you from going and making that idea happen in the world. I think that we spend a lot of time convincing ourselves that it's not our time, that if we just wait, if we just get a little more education or a little more experience or, earn a little more legitimacy from the powers that be, that we're somehow going to be stronger. But you learn a lot and you're able to do a lot by saying, I'm not going to wait. This is something that's affecting me now, that I have an idea for now, and that I want to go out and get started working on. And that takes audacity and it takes guts, but it's something that you're not going to regret. The other things that I would say are my top tips for people who are doing peacemaking or want to make a difference in their communities. First is build a team, and build a team full of people who do not look like you and do not think like you. The best thing you can do is bring other people into the work because they're going to see other things that you can't. They're going to have skills that you don't have, and you want to make sure that you're not just building a team of people that think the same way, but of people who have the same values and are going to challenge each other to make sure that they have the best solutions. The other thing that I would say is really get to know really, really deeply the injustice that you're working on, because it doesn't make it any less valid if you really are steamed up about a particular issue, but you don't know a whole lot about it. But the more you know about it, the better you're going to be able to find a solution that really gets to the root cause of the problem. So those are what I would say my big tips are. Get started now. Don't wait. Find a team of people and make sure there are people who don't look like you and don't think like you on that team, and really, really get to know the problem that you're tackling. Talk with as many people as possible. Read as much as possible. Become an expert, because those are the things that are really going to help you do your best work.
What's been the most important lesson you've learned so far through all these efforts?
The most important lesson that I've learned so far is never be afraid to admit that you were wrong and to try something different. We have spent so much time with the Teaching Peace Initiative, putting our curriculum out in the field, right, and trying it in the classroom and saying that worked, but that didn't work, and we're going to bring it back and we're going to revise it. We're going to go out and try something new again. Because if you're at either of the extremes, if you're going to say, oh, we're not going to try it until it's absolutely perfect and we know that it's going to be great, then you're never going to get anything off the ground, right? If you're sitting around waiting for perfect, nothing will ever get done. And at the same time, if you say, oh, well, the first thing I came up with, that's perfect and it doesn't need to change, then you may be doing work, but it's not going to be very good work and it's not going to make much of a difference. And so what I've learned is that sometimes you need to have the audacity to say, I'm going to go out and try this, and I know it's not going to be perfect, but you also need to have the humility to say, I'm going to learn from what I did that wasn't perfect, and I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to make it better until it is. That's the most important thing that I've learned.
And why should someone listening consider getting involved in Peace First?
I think Peace First is really special because I think when young people have ideas about what they want to do, most adults will say, oh, that's a great idea. Maybe that's something you can work on when you're older. And what Peace First says is like, you have the power to change the world right now. Right now. You don't have to wait, right? You don't have to go to college, right? You don't have to be an adult with kids and a job and money to change the world. You can do it right now. You have that power, and we're going to help you. And I think it's amazing to see an organization that cares so much about saying, you have an idea, you see something that's wrong, and you want to get something done. We're not just going to cheer you on. We're going to give you the resources. We're going to give you the mentoring, the money, the tools. We are going to help you make that difference right now, because I think that that's so important. I think we lose out on so much energy and so much productivity for young people who really do have the potential to make a difference right now, but are just continually told to wait. And Peace First is tired, I think, of hearing young people told to wait, and they are ready to do the helping right now. And I think that that's fantastic. I think that, speaking from my work, they've really helped us do what we're doing so much better. And I know they've helped hundreds, thousands of kids around the country do that already on the Peace First Challenge. And I would say, if you have an idea and if you really want to get something done, there are the people to talk to. And they are just, their job and the work that these people go into work and love to do every day is to help you figure out how you can make your community better. So if you want to do something, go to the Peace First Challenge website and start a page and start having a conversation with the people in Peace First.
And Fish, thanks again for joining me and for your efforts to spread education and peace among youth. To learn more about the Peace First Challenge and to get involved today, visit peacefirst.org and scroll over the challenge heading to get started.